Which is what if Naruto awakened the Rinnegan and became leader of Akatsuki. Part 1. The Nadaima Mekage gazed over his village through his blindfold, hearing the downpour envelop his skyscraper-filled village. He's done so much over the past 3 years for this village, and for that they worshipped him, loved him. It was so different in this village than his previous one. He used to think he could get what he wanted by working hard and doing the right thing. But now he knew what it was to be a shinobi, to be nothing but a weapon. Gone was the former pathetic, happy-go-lucky, Dobi that everyone once made fun of. In his place a powerful, vigilant, intellectual that was to be respected, feared if need be. But he didn't need to use fear, no, not in this village, never in this village. Though the Mekage could only smile under his black mask, one that resembled his former sensei's. He once loved Konoha, his past village, and he once wanted to protect it and everyone in it. But now, that dream was gone, well, maybe not gone, but changed. Now he wanted to protect everyone within a megacre, and as for Konoha, he'd crush it if need be. Typhon-sama, a man clad in a black, high-collared, cloak with red clouds painted randomly on its shunshin ed in front of the Mekage's desk in a kneeling bow, the Rokudaime Hokage, Danzo, has arrived with his represents and are requesting your immediate attention. They wish for you to sign a treaty with them. It seems they have become quite apprehensive about who our alliances are with. As you know, Otogakure, Iwagakure, Kusagakure, and Takigakure have declared war on Konoha. With no one on their side and Suna and Kumo on ours, if we were to join the other villages, Konoha would without a doubt be destroyed. They believe you are going to side with Oto and as such have come here, hoping to make peace. Are we? The first asked his subordinate. Excuse me, sir. The long-haired brunette asked, moving his head up so he could see the back of his Mekage. He wasn't scared or anything, he just found the question a bit strange. Do you underestimate my abilities? The Kage asked rhetorically, turning so he could face his underling. I can easily feel the hate that's radiating off your body, so I'm asking you. Do you want me to side with Oto, so we can attack Konoha? The 21-year-old hesitated for several seconds, thinking of the same village his Mekage was once from, number, Typhon-sama. Rest at ease, Itachi-san, the Nadaime commanded softly. We may one day attack, but for now you'll have to deal with them. Itachi couldn't really tell if his Mekage was smiling or not, due to all the coverings that were on his face, but he was still reassured by his leader's words. Tell the rest of Akatsuki to meet up with me outside the room we'll be negotiating in. The leader of Akatsuki ordered, knowing Itachi had nodded. Oh, and you can take the rest of the day off. I hear your little brother has made quite a name for himself under the tainted wing of that Danzo. If he sees you we might have to go to war. The Mekage could read Itachi's energy like a book even though he did his best remaining stoic. The very mention of Danzu's name made the Uchiha livid. Yes, Typhon-sama, with that the Uchiha slaughterer left with a shunshin. Turning back to his office's window, the Mekage took one last blindfolded look over his fertile village as a flock of seagulls took off from one of the many skyscrapers that polluted his land. He'd waited so long for this day, the day the gears of time were finally going to be put in motion and all his plans would come to blossom. Flashback. You owe me one Sasuke-tem. Naruto stated coldly as he trudged further into the village, a nearly unconscious Uchiha Sasuke lying on his back as he tried his best holding him up in a piggyback. All he got was a small groan of acknowledgement. Naruto's frown turned upside down as he started to chuckle, happy that he'd been able to return his surrogate brother to the village he loved. It had been a long and tiring battle that seemed to awaken a hidden Kekkei Genkei bloodline trait to both of the ninjas' surprise, within Naruto. It was that which turned the tide on the two's battle. It was all going Sasuke's way at first as his Sharingan took on its final form. Sasuke was able to read every move before Naruto even made it. But then Naruto's eyes, too, changed. His demonic red eyes morphed, the irises turning into a light purple, sliver mix, which colored his entire eyeball with multiple, highly defined, rings surrounding the pupil. The two didn't even notice it happen until Naruto all of a sudden started reading Sasuke's moves. It was at that moment Sasuke detected his eyes, knowing he'd have to go all out if he'd have any chance of winning. Flashback within a flashback. The water crashed and banged as the two chakras clashed against one another, sending shockwaves throughout the valley. One dark purple and tainted with vile chakra, while the other was a unique blue every ordinary shinobi had. Sasuke stood under Uchiha Madara's monumental statue, feeling the power course through him as the second level of his curse mark took over, giving him unspeakable powers. His hand-like wings stretched out from his back as they made their first appearance. The crackling of 1,000 birds filled the valley as Sasuke's left hand was covered with a white chidori, 1,000 birds that flashed streams of black off its electrical body. On the other side of the gully stood Uzumaki Naruto, looking the calmest Sasuke had ever seen him. A hole in Naruto's orange jumpsuit right over his heart marked Sasuke's unfruitful attempt at killing him, the scar that once lay there now healed and gone. Over him was the colossal sculpture of the Shodai Hokage, one of the many Hokages Naruto looked up to. In his eyes, unbeknownst to the two, was the infamous Dujutsu, the Rinnegan transmigration eye. Naruto's perspective on the world had completely changed during their fight. The moment Naruto awoke his Kekkei Genkai, the power radiated through him. And with that great rush of power came a flood of memories he thought he'd locked away. The beatings, the glares, the loneliness. All of it at once left him detached and isolated, but those feelings only lasted several seconds before he noticed Sasuke flying his way, the chidori in his hand ready to kill. For some unknown reason, Naruto felt a strange power within him awaken yet again. Naruto's hands traveled up his body from his sides, this untold of energy flowing up as it made its way to his hands. Watching calmly as Sasuke aimed to ram his tainted chidori-covered hand into the Jinchuriki's heart, Naruto propelled his hands out at Sasuke, screaming the name of this newfound jutsu. He had no idea he knew. To the heavens, Shinra Tensei, divine judgment. Sasuke was only several feet away when his chidori dispersed, not able to withstand this invisible force that hit him. The unseen push didn't stop as it sent Sasuke flying back across the river, a large trench cutting through the surface of the water as he skimmed by it. He crashed into the legs of Madara's statue, creating a large explosion of dust and rocks. Naruto slowly watched in horror as a long crack ran up the side of Madara's memorial from where Sasuke had crashed, all the way up to its head. Time seemed to slow for the boy as he observed the statue collapse on itself, crushing his surrogate brother underneath. Sasuke. End flashback within a flashback. Fortunately, for the both of them, Sasuke had been hit so hard he rolled off to the side, away from the crumbling statue as it fell. Though the hit was strong enough to knock the Uchiha out cold for a while, he was lucky enough to avoid being gravely wounded if not dead. That's how it came to be, Naruto bringing Sasuke back to his village like he promised his friends he would. Naruto. The young Uzumaki heard to his left, noticing the two Chunin, Hagane Katetsu and Kamizuki Izumo, that frequently guarded the gate when not helping the fifth Hokage. Naruto was too tired to talk as he watched them run over, making sure he was alright. He was grateful the two could tell he was about to pass out and knew exactly what to do. Silently thanking them, he slowly slid into a light sleep, falling into one of their chests as he fell forward. The next time Naruto awoke, his eyes were wrapped in bandages because he was complaining that his eyes hurt in his sleep, and he lay lying in a hospital bed, or he thought so from the way it smelled. For some reasons his senses also greatly increased after his bloodline awoke. Naruto then sensed his sensei, Kakashi, leaning against the door to the hall. Kakashi walked up to the foot of the hospital bed, smiling proudly behind his mask. "You really did it, Naruto." Naruto looked away, bashfully blushing while rubbing the back of his head. What? Kakashi never praised Naruto on anything. It was nothing, really. Kakashi's face turned stern. "Oh, so that fisted-sized hole in your jacket was nothing." Naruto flinched at Kakashi's voice. "Naruto, you can't defend Sasuke for what he's done. He's committed a crime, and he will pay for it, no matter what you say." "But, no buts," Kakashi ordered, wondering why the boy had wrappings around his eyes. "Oh, okay, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said weakly. Kakashi let out a sigh. I'm sorry I'm being so strict, the council has just been on everyone's ass. Naruto laughed at his sensei's choice of words. What have they been asking? Naruto noted Kakashi hesitated at first. It seems the old geezers think you tried to kill Sasuke and are trying to find someone who will testify to that. It seems if they can find 11 people to testify, they have ruling as to what your punishment will be. Wait a minute. Naruto shouted urgently, why would I be punished? Naruto couldn't see that Kakashi looked away sadly. The council is allowed to judge what a criminal's punishment is, unless the Hokage wishes to intervene, which she has for you, but she can be overruled if a majority of the people and/or ninja the council members have picked, wish that the convict be punished. But why am I even on trial? The council can condemn any ninja or villager if it finds the person is a threat to the village. How would I be a threat? Oh yeah. A long silence pasted over the two as Naruto remembered the Kyuubi that was sealed within him. But so what? He wasn't the Kyuubi. Naruto found he was becoming more raged than he ever felt before. How will it go down? The Uzumaki asked through gritted teeth. Kakashi let out another sigh. He seemed to be doing that a lot lately. The council is made up of clan heads, the daimyo, old ninja that have retired, and successful businessmen or women. The clan heads get to choose 5 ninja, the retirees and the businessmen or women will get to choose 5 because they're basically the same, while the daimyo gets to choose 1. The 11 will then be asked, should the council have the right to condemn the accused or not? Or another question close to that, and then we just wait for their opinions. If it falls into the council's favor, the 3 head counselors, which will be the 3 sitting next to each other in front of you, will choose what your sentence will be. What about the Tsunade no Bachin? The Hokage, though she has nearly as much authority as it, is not part of the council. So she won't be there. Don't worry, any ninja is allowed to view the trial, even the Hokage. All your friends will be there too. Kakashi smiled, trying to comfort his student. Anyway, I got to go. The Ika Ika series has just released another book, and it has my name written all over it. Naruto found it weird that Kakashi was so giddy, much different than his usual laid-back outlook. Oh, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto called after his teacher as he exited the room. Only Kakashi's head bopped back in. Yes. Who's gonna be the judge? I think it's called. There isn't a judge, but a moderator. Naruto audibly gulped. He might not have known what that was, but it sure sounded bad. And who's that going to be? Naruto heard Kakashi let out another sigh. This one the deepest so far. Danzo of Nate Root. Naruto stared vacantly at the spot his sensei was formerly at. Who the is that? Do you know what you are being charged with? The so-called Danzo of Ne proclaimed over the council. Danzo, with Mitokado Homura and Udatane Kaharu at his sides, sat in between the rest of the council. Naruto figured those 3 were the head counselors. To the left of the 3 sat the civilian council, while on the other sat the military council. The entire room was a circular auditorium surrounding a chair where the condemned sat. All the council members were on the 2nd level, while any ninja that wished to watch the trial could sit on the 1st level. So far the only ones on the 1st level were Tsunade, Kakashi, Jiraiya, Iruka, and several other Junin that he recognized to be his so-called friends, senseis. Strange, all those people were the only ones that came to visit him at the hospital. Yeah, I'm being charged with something I didn't do. Naruto spit out. He had planned to go into the trial calm and collected, but that shattered when he sensed none of his friends there. I mean shit, their fucking senseis were here, so where the hell are they? What the hell could they possibly be doing when their senseis weren't even around to give them something to do? Probably off sucking their precious Sasuke-kuns, hospitalized. Naruto soon stopped in thought, not getting where all this pent-up anger was coming from. Naruto's thoughts were soon cut short as Danzo repeated himself, boy. I will only say this one more time. You are under trial, and it is our decision as to what your punishment will be. Hey, yeah right, I know you can't do jack shit if you don't have a majority rule by the people. Naruto could feel Danzo's brow furrow. Naruto decided on wearing a long black cloth instead of the bandages the hospital provided, much like the one he had his forehead protector attached to. He thought it'd be pretty bad if everyone saw his new eyes. He didn't know why, but they just seemed like they'd get him in trouble. So he came up with that blindfold thing, and if anyone asked, he'd just say his eyes got injured in the fight. That's what everyone at the hospital believed. And though he had the blindfold on, he could see fairly well. Whatever happened to his eyes, they were like a combination of Sharingan and Byakugan. All he saw was black and blue. The blue being the person's chakra, but that wasn't all. He could also see, damn, what did Kakashi call it, oh yeah, their tenketsu. He pretty much saw a different variation of what everyone else saw, and was slightly colorblind. Good job, Naruto. Kakashi told Naruto mentally, happy his student had listened to him in the hospital. That may be the deal, but I reassure you, it will all fall in our favor in the end. Danzo promised darkly, getting dirty looks from all the ninja floor under him and several clan heads to his right. Now let us begin. The first to go up was the civilian half, and let's just say, all went down the tube for Naruto and, 2 times his age, friends. All, I repeat, all of the citizens that were picked said the head council should choose what the demon child's punishment should be. Some didn't even let Danzo finish the question, and others even suggested forms of punishment. At this point Naruto and company were getting a little worried as to what the others were going to say. One more yes for the council getting rule of the punishment, and it was a majority. Who is your pick, Shikaku? Danzo asked the Nara clan head. We choose Nara Shikamaru. As the words left Shikaku's mouth, his son entered through one of the doors on the ground floor. Naruto smiled widely, happy that at least one of his genin friends was there. Noticing the grin, Shikamaru smiled too, trying to reassure Naruto. Though it soon faltered when he noticed the 20 Anbu lined in 5 standing on either side of Naruto. Naruto could see the tenketsu around Shikamaru's mouth move, saying, "Hey Naruto," but then he realized the roped blonde was blindfolded. Naruto's, "Hey," which would have completely shocked Shikamaru, was stopped when Danzo interrupted, "If you mind Nara, we'd like to continue." TCH, Shikamaru snorted under his breath, annoyed the old man came between him and Naruto, "Yes, sir. Who is it you deem fit in giving that, boys, judgment, the Hokage? Or the council? The Hokage." The lazy genius stated clearly, much to the relief of the ninja present. Danzo didn't seem irritated in the least, why should he? It was 1 to 5. Next. Naruto didn't listen to the name given as he saw the tenketsu around Shikamaru's hand go up, giving him a small thumbs up. Realizing another clan head had given a name, Naruto turned to see who it was, well, as best as he could. All Naruto saw was the regular anatomy of tenketsu, and an average flow of chakra, with a small hue of purple like the one Sasuke had shown when full influenced by the curse mark, but it was pretty much the same as everyone else's. Though for some strange reason, Naruto got a really bizarre feeling that he'd seen her before. He also noticed some of the civilian council members were radiating with hate. Who is it you deem fit in GIV? The woman, he could safely identify as from the voice, didn't even let Danzo finish his sentence as she answered anxiously, almost like she didn't want to be there, Hokage. Naruto's head followed her as she left, laughing on the inside at her total lack of respect for the entire council. He could clearly remember that voice, the second proctor of his Chunin exams, Mitarashi Anko. Anyway, the next 2 candidates went fast, both Akamichi Choji and Inuzuka Kiba demanding the Hokage being the one to give judgment, much to the head counselors and civilian council's detestation. Naruto was very happy at his 2 friends' appearances, giving him reassuring words from the way their mouth tenketsu moved. The last of the clan heads was now up, Hyuga Hiyashi. Danzo-san, I was originally going to nominate branch member, Hyuga Neji, and I tell you, he would have favored the Hokage. But I decided against that, so I nominated myself. As Hiyashi was making his way down, Tsunade and the other ninjas sitting under the council were starting to get scared for the blonde genin. Hiyashi rarely did anything good, if any, so it was very slim the Jinchuriki was getting out of this. Naruto came to realize Hiyashi was Neji's uncle by the time the Hyuga clan head was in front of the soon-to-be teen. Hopefully he wasn't as stuck up and fate-crazed as Neji when Naruto first met him. I am a man that holds high standards. I believe that a person cannot do anything if he does not have the right ancestry. Tsunade and the ninja next to her were getting more scared by the second. Well, Kurenai and Asuma seemed fine. He wasn't their student after all. But, Hiyashi sighed, rising some of the ninja's hope, this boy has changed that. This boy proved to my nephew that hard work could prevail against anything, and because of that, I was able to gain the strength to tell Neji something very important. Unfortunately I cannot tell you what, but know because of that information I told Neji, I have reunited with my nephew, and I owe it all to this boy. Therefore, I vote for the Hokage. Hiyashi stoically walked back to his seat after patting Naruto on the shoulder fatherly, completely shocking all present. Hiyashi wanted to tell everyone his respect for the boy only grew when he heard Naruto had returned to the village with Uchiha Sasuke, said to be like a brother to the blonde. Saving a brother, something Hiyashi wasn't able to do. Danzo let out a low sigh. He had thought for sure Hiyashi was going to rule in favor of them, but no. He had to make some long speech about the boy and his stupid power of making people turn over a new leaf. It didn't matter though. Next was the daimyo, and boy was Danzo glad people invented a thing called bribery. Naruto didn't know where the daimyo sat until he started talking. He was perched behind the head counselors and seemed to be waving a handheld fan as if he was hot. Oh, my pick already. The bone-skinny daimyo asked pleasantly with a sigh, I guess I'll call upon. All the ninja that felt attached in any way to the whiskered boy were at the edge of their seats. Danzo. All the hope within those very same ninja sank. Not him. Anyone but him. I vote in favor of the council, which means it's 6-5, the council wins. Danzo announced, much to the pleasure of civilian council. We will hold a short intervention while the head counselors discuss what his sentence will be. A couple minutes after the three left, mostly all the other council members left. Only Naruto, his Anbu guards, and his friends were left. Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba came around to the ninja section after their votes were said, wanting to see their friend's trial. Even Neji showed up when Hiyashi started giving his speech. This is total bullshit, Kiba said loudly as he stood by Naruto's side. Naruto had his head down so his blonde hair shadowed his rapt eyes. Quiet, Kiba-kun. Yuichi Kurenai ordered his student, not really caring for the blonde's predicament. She, along with Azuma, was dragged down here by Kakashi and Guy. The council has made its decision, we have to just wait and see what the three elders say. Damn it, the Godime Hokage muttered under her breath, she just felt so useless. She couldn't protect Naoki or Dan from enemy ninja, and no, she couldn't protect Naruto from their very own council. Feeling a strong hand on her left shoulder, Tsunade looked to see her old teammate Jiraiya, who had a comforting smile. Don't worry, no matter what the punishment, I'll be there to protect him, I promise. Thank you, Jiraiya. Tsunade's thanks soon ended as a large vein bulged on her forehead, feeling Jiraiya's hand as it now groped her butt. Let go. Of course. Jiraiya said pleasantly, retracting his hand, knowing it would have been broken if he didn't. The only two that really confronted Naruto was Shikamaru and Neji. Shikamaru walked up to his left while Neji to his right, both kneeling when they got closer. Sorry, Lee, Tenten, Shino, and Hinata-sama aren't here. Neji started, getting no reaction from the younger genin. They're all on a mission to Yama no Kuni, Bear Country. Sasuke, as you know, is still hospitalized and Sakura and Ino are frequently visiting him. Ino's only visiting because, and I quote, like I'd let that forehead beat me in love. The two got no response from the boy whatsoever. We have come to a decision. Danzu's voice rang throughout the auditorium, all the council members entering out of nowhere as they took their seats. Naruto's friends did the same. Uzumaki Naruto, under the judgment of the three head counselors, shall have his title stripped from him. You shall never be a ninja and are forbidden from any training of any kind. If caught, you will be executed. Danzo continued through the many complaints he was getting below him. Even Kurenai and Asuma found that too harsh. You are forbidden from talking to any rank of ninja, other than the Hokage, should you request a mission, for you will be put under suspicion of getting hidden training. That is all, the council has spoken. Take him away. Naruto's head was down just like before, and before any of his friends could protest, the Anbu had already taken him out of the room. Naruto's blindfolded eyes scanned over Sasuke's body. He was sitting on a backless stool at the Uchiha's bedside. Just an hour ago he'd been told he could no longer be a ninja, and though he didn't show it, that infuriated him to no end. All because of him, their precious Uchiha. He'd done everything to bring Sasuke back to the village. Did he get a thanks or a smile from any of them? No, he didn't. Not only did the council take away his ninja rank, but they said he couldn't talk to any ranked ninja, which were pretty much all his friends. Other than Tyuki and his daughter, he didn't have any citizen friends. Naruto then contemplated on whether or no he should leave. He could see out of the corner of his eye out in the hall that his other teammate, Haruno Sakura, was making her way towards Sasuke's room. Fuck's wrong with her? It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, why wasn't she sleeping? Oh, right, because her, Sasuke-kun, was lying right in front of him. Deciding to stay, Naruto heard the audible gasp as Sakura entered, dropping whatever she was holding. Naruto didn't even turn to her direction when she whispered his name, Naruto. Naruto was about to say, what? As harshly as he could, still annoyed that she didn't even attend his trial, but then remembered the council's words. If he talked to her, he'd be executed, and it didn't help there was a camera hanging on the corner of the room. Sakura started to get annoyed at his quietness. First he put Sasuke-kun in a coma and now he won't talk to her. Who does he think he is? Naruto. She repeated, Naruto. He continued to look at Sasuke through his blindfold, completely ignoring the pink-haired girl. Marching over the flower she'd brought for Sasuke, that she moments ago dropped, Sakura glared at the boy. Answer me, damn it. Slap. Naruto's face was now facing away from Sakura. A large red imprint of a manicured hand was on his left cheek. First you bring Sasuke-kun back nearly dead, and now you won't even answer me when I'm talking to you. Sakura started. Naruto could feel the immense hatred that was rolling off her small body. I hate you, I wish you were dead. You monster. A lingering chill ran through Naruto's entire body, the haunting memories of how the villagers used to torture him when he was younger creeping its way into his head. Go die, you filthy demon. Why does such a horrible thing like you even exist? Let's just kill it so we don't have to look at that ugly face anymore. No, killing it would be too easy on a demon like him. I got a better idea. Naruto slowly awoke from his daydreaming, still hearing the echo of his younger self's terrifying screams of pain. Naruto abruptly stood up from his stool, slightly scaring the Haruno as to what he'd do. All the ex-ninja did was walk past her, shutting the hospital door silently as to not wake other patients. Looking from the door to the bedridden Uchiha, Sakura noticed Sasuke was wide awake, staring at the ceiling wordlessly. Sasuke-ku. You're an idiot. He cut her off, thinking of his blonde teammate, Naruto. Naruto slowly walked through a deserted street within Konoha. All the villagers were likely asleep or going there because all the lights to homes or stores were turned off. Slowly Naruto brought his hand up through his hair, feeling a burning sensation within his head. It had been there ever since he awaked his, yet-to-be-named, bloodline limit at the Valley of the End. It was like an itching that scratched at the back of his head. He didn't tell the nurses or doctors, like they would have listened, because for some strange reason whenever he read something, he learned Braille or learned a new bit of information, like with Kakashi, it receded. Though lately it's been acting up, mostly because the only thing new he learned was him not being a ninja, and that wasn't a need-to-know thing in his opinion. Noticing, to his luck, the biggest ninja library in Konoha a couple stores away, Naruto decided to make a detour from his trip home. Naruto would never have thought he'd be at a library in his free time, but then again, he never thought he'd be stripped of his ninja rank. Breaking in, it was closed, was pretty easy to do with his skills, just using the vents on the roof as a way to get in. Flicking on a light switch near the front doors, rows of lights turned on, revealing bookshelf after bookshelf of knowledge. Slowly untying his blindfold, a large smile spread across his face. Let's begin. During Naruto's nightly readings at the library, the Uzumaki learned several very important things. First, it turns out the Kage Bunshin has more than one use. It allows the user to gain any knowledge that clone learns. Though it says it's dangerous to use more than 50 cause by then the ninja will be out of chakra and die. Luckily for Naruto, he had a large supply of chakra, and could even go into the hundreds with the Taju Kage Bunshin technique. Another hazardous fact is that the more the clone learns or the more clones there are, it will all come back to the user in a large migraine, ranging from a small headache to an eternal coma. But for some reason, whenever Naruto used his Taju Kage Bunshin or Kage Bunshin and the knowledge all came back to him, instead of a headache the longing desire within Naruto's head would fade. His brain felt peaceful and serene, giving him feelings he never knew he had. Second, he found out the Kage Bunshin could be used for physical training as well, though nothing he read told him that. He figured it out when one of his clones was doing 100 pull-ups after he'd read everything he was assigned. When that clone dispersed, he could feel the slight tiredness and soreness that came with the pull-ups. Now when Naruto creates his clones and assigns them to reading, after they finished all their stuff, they're to start light workouts. What? He couldn't really tell them to go wild. They were in a library and he didn't want to fall in a coma because of fatigue. Last, he learned the dujutsu he had was called the Rinnegan, and the only other person that had it was the first ninja, the Raikudo Sennin, Six Realms Sage. Oddly, the moment he learned that fact visions flashed through his mind, like he'd just awakened the Rinnegan. He had practically memorized everything within the library by the time he fully awoke the Rinnegan, and now he knew what he had to do to reach the Rinnegan's highest peak. That's what brings us to Naruto's position in front of the Hokage's memorial, the heavy downpour high in the sky casting a deep shadow over the entire village. Forgive me, Shodai-sama, Nadaime-sama, please forgive me. Naruto thought to himself as he grabbed the shovel wedged into the ground next to him. Raising it to his side as a loud clap of thunder flashed, Naruto drove the shovel into the soil over the Shodai's grave. Tsunade looked out her window from her chaired position behind her desk. Naruto's banishment as a ninja 2 months ago hit some people really hard. Especially because none of them had seen him since they were forbidden to, other than the cage, but she just didn't have the time no matter how much she wished she did. Shikamaru seemed lazier than ever, missing some of the missions he was assigned, not going to his team trainings, and just staying at his family compound all day. Even his dad Shikaku seemed a bit lazier, though he still got all his work done. Choji now ate at Ichiraku's daily, along with Shikamaru whenever he stopped hibernating at his house. Ino and Shino didn't really seem fazed by the boy's exile. Kurenai wasn't really fazed either, but she did feel sad for the boy every once in a while. Asuma was actually seen less with a cigarette in his mouth. If you asked he would have just told you it was because Kurenai told him to quit. But deep down it was really because Asuma used to take care of the kid when he was around too, and the brat would always tell the Junin, smoking was bad. It wasn't until now did he start listening. Well, he'd have one ever so often. Kiba and Hinata seemed really down. Kiba started gaining respect for the boy after he was defeated in the Chunin exams, and it only grew when he learned he was successful in brining Sasuke back to the village. Hinata was more crushed than her dog-like teammate, barely ever leaving her room even when Hiyashi said it was bad to continue like that. Neji still held his cold demeanor on the outside, but everyone knew he was hurt deep down, wishing he could have done something to help the blonde. Lee and Gaik had been seen working extra hard on all kinds of things, big or small. Even Tenten was working harder than she usually did. The three that took it the hardest though, was Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi. Kakashi could be seen reading his book upside down at times, showing he was clearly thinking about something else. Sakura felt dejected. She wished she could have taken back everything she said to him at the hospital. Sasuke, not surprisingly, was only charged with a couple D-rank missions without pay as punishment. He seemed the most miserable, he would never admit it, but Naruto really was like a brother. Tsunade let out a sigh, thinking of her little Naruto. She had practically finished all her work for once, and was about to leave when Shizune came barging into her office. Tsunade-sama. Shizune panicked, taking in breath after breath of air. Shizune, calm down. Now what hap? Naruto's died. Tsunade-sama. Tsunade looked out her window, letting out another sigh as a scenario just like the one yesterday happened. She was in her Hokage chair, looking deadly pale out her window. Yesterday Naruto was found dead in his house, cause of death, kunai to the heart. It was later revealed by morticians that it was suicide. They were going to have his name embroidered in the Mia stone, but the councilman interfered, saying the boy was not a ninja and could not be put on the stone. His funeral was small, most of his other friends being on missions. Everyone was now 3 if not 4 times worse than they were when he was only stripped of his title. Even mission success rates were dropping due to the lack of his never-give-up attitude. Rummaging through one of her many drawers in her desk, Tsunade pulled out a bottle of sake, immediately pouring it into a saucer. Tsunade slowly raised it to her lips, but dropped it when she felt a familiar spike of chakra out in the distance. Jumping from her chair, Tsunade ran as fast as her high heels could take her. Entering a large meadow within the dense forest that surrounded it, Tsunade noticed a boy with his back to her, standing underneath what looked to be the largest and oldest tree within Konoha. This person was wearing a black high-collared cloak with numerous red clouds imprinted in it. The thing that drew Tsunade's attention the most was the spiky blonde hair on the boy's head. Though the Hokage was several yards away, she put her hand out, trying to reach him as she walked forward. Her shocked walk was halted as she was wrapped in what looked like wood, which protruded from the ground, from head to toe in the blink of an eye. Her eyes widened in shock and terror as she realized this was her grandfather's Kekkei Genkei, Mokudan, wood release. She struggled against the restraints, but it was to no avail. This wood was filled with chakra and trying to bend it was like trying to bend diamond. Tsunade grunted, giving it one last-ditch effort at escaping. It didn't work. She looked to the boy. Who are you? Don't tell me you've forgotten about me already. Tsunade Nobachan. The cloak-wearing blonde said coldly, turning to face her. Tsunade could see a mask that resembled Kakashi's hid Naruto's mouth. Tied around his head was a black cloth that was as long as the one holding his Konoha forehead protector. At first she felt relieved and thankful that he was still alive, but she then gasped, noticing the long slash that ran through the leaf symbol. Her current dilemma then came back to her. What do you think you're doing, Naruto? She yelled at the boy. Forgive me, Tsunade Nobachan, Naruto told Tsunade sadly, untying his blindfold. Forgive me. The fifth wasn't even able to let out a gasp at her surrogate son's eyes as a strong unknown force pulled her toward Naruto, completely shattering the wood wrapped around at the pressure. She couldn't even move under the gravitational force pulling her as she saw the long, sharp piece of black metal that Naruto pulled from his sleeve. Naruto stabbed the metal into Tsunade's stomach, stopping her forward motion in the air as she chalked out blood. Tsunade's entire stomach felt as if it was on fire, more so than just a simple stab wound. It was like that metal weapon was burning her insides. Laying the dying cage onto the grass, Naruto slowly slid his weapon out of her bleeding stomach, the blood-covered metal dissolving into the air as if it didn't exist. It's funny, Tsunade Haim. Naruto told her as she looked at him with cloudy eyes. I'm glad that the council forbids me from being a ninja or talking to my friends. Because of that, I was able to come up with this ingenious plan, not being hindered by my friends' nonsense or useless missions. This nifty plan of mine, sorry, I can't help but toot my own horn, in my opinion I outdid even myself, started the day I was exiled as a ninja. All I'm going to tell you, though, is that body they found at my house was actually a lowly academy student I killed, kunai to the heart, remember. Though the only really hard part was making an invisible seal that transformed his features to mine, permanently, even got the fact cerulean eyes that I used to have. Naruto had learned a couple days after usage that his Rinnegan was eternally activated, his old sea blue eyes gone forever. A lone tear cascaded down her already pale skin. How did Naruto turn out like this? Don't fret, Tsunade Hime. Naruto persuaded, you shall be with me and your grandfather and granduncle for a lifetime as one of my bodies. Now let this one last act of kindness bring you joy when you're at God's golden gates. Tsunade didn't know what he was talking about with the whole, one of my bodies, but why would she care? She was dying. And though she didn't show it, Tsunade was shocked that Naruto had bent further down, capturing her lips through his mask. It was kind and sweet, and the very last one Tsunade would ever have as she slowly slid her eyes shut, letting her life slip away with Naruto's warmth. How sweet. A voice up in the trees over Naruto's head called, doing little to startle the greatest bijou holder. Why should he, Naruto was expect him? She was like a mother to you, was she not? Or maybe no. Something more. Shut up, Naruto growled, turning to face the large tree as he stood back up. Come out, Madara. A blur of black fell from the tree branches. Madara landed gracefully, his orange swirl-looking mask, that Naruto would later compliment for its orangeness, held securely in his left hand. His face was the same as it was 70 years ago. Well, there was no point in counting, seeing Madara didn't age any, just shorter black hair. My oh my, that Rinnegan of yours sure is something. Sensing me as some feat. Madara smiled happily. You two can come out as well. Naruto ordered, getting a curious look from Madara. Hearing some bushes rustle, Madara looked behind Naruto, nearly dropping his mask. There standing several yards away was Senju Hashirama and Senju Tobirama. Wait, no. There was something different about them. Don't worry yourself, Madara, those two are mindless, they're part of me now. Naruto's finger pulled down the mask he had covering his entire nose and down, so it hung loosely around his neck. Multiple piercings, made with the same material as his spike weapons, cover his face. 3 small stub-like piercings ran vertically down either side of his nose. 6 looped ones were cascading around the outer rim of each ear, while a longer bar-like piercing ran perpendicularly through them. Under each side of his bottom lip 2 small triangle-shaped piercings hung. Looking back to the first and second, and now that they were several feet away, he could see they were wearing the same attire as Naruto. Konoha headband protector with a slash through it, though the Nadim still had his crown-like headband. Every accessory of Akatsuki was on them, the cloak with red clouds, painted and manicured nails, the bamboo hat, and even the zero kanji ring that he'd given to Naruto was on their right thumbs. Seems the kid made duplicates. Though the only thing Madara found unique about them were the many piercings. The Shodai had a big upside-down U in stub piercings starting from the top of his nose to bending down either side of his cheeks. 3 2-inch long, stick-like piercings ran through both his ears horizontally. The Nadim had a small bar piercing running diagonally through his nose. On either side of his cheeks running down vertically were 2 stub piercings, while 2 were horizontally placed on his chin. Don't get any ideas, these aren't really piercings. Naruto stated, a bit annoyed. Having the Rinnegan gives me perfect control over my chakra and the Kyubis, even though it's said to be impossible to do so. These piercing-looking things are made of Kyubi's chakra, and I use these to transfer thoughts and parts of my soul to the other bodies. It's like I'm more than one person at a time. I have control over what any of them do. I can see what they see, feel what they feel. They can even talk when. The moment Naruto stopped talking, Tobirama started. I want them to. Mind going into more detail? Madara asked. He never met the Raikudo Sennin when he was alive, so he didn't know much about the Rinnegan. Sure, it's going to take a little while putting all the piercings in Tsunade's body. Naruto said, untying the sash around her waist as he pulled off her clothes, beginning her surgery. There are 6 bodies in total that the Rinnegan user can control. The people chosen can use whatever technique or Kekai Genkai they had before they died, which is why Shodai-sama was able to use his Mokuten. Madara whistled in astonishment. But that's not all. These different bodies gain abilities when I resurrect them. The Shodai is the Jigokudo Hell realm. The Nadaime is the Ninjendo human realm. And Tsunade Heim shall be the Gakido hungry ghost realm. Now, to tell you their abilities. Ninjendo specializes in taijutsu, which was the Tobirama-sama's weak attribute, the strongest being ninjutsu. So it's quite clear as to why I did that, seeing he still has all his abilities from when he was alive. Tsunade Heim is like a reverse scenario of that. She sucked at ninjutsu, but was great at taijutsu, so I made her the Gakido. It allows her to seal away any chakra or element-based attack. Basically, she invulnerable when it comes to ninjutsu. Then we have Shodai-sama. Jigokudo has the power to resurrect the dead by calling forth a spectral Enma head. This Enma can ingest the deceased and return them to life, free of injury. So as long as any of my other bodies die, even me, I can transfer to the Shodai and use his skill to resurrect them. But if he dies, I'll just have to find a new body to take his place. Can you use the others' techniques? Madara asked, wondering if the boy could now use Mokuten. No, only the Shodai. I see, so where are the other 3 bodies? I am the Tendo Diva realm. I can bend gravitational mass, which means I can repulse things or draw them to me, but the downfall is it has a 10-second interval before it's recharged. The other 2 bodies we'll have to make a short stop for, they're buried next to each other like the first and second. And where's this stop? Naruto finished Tsunade's surgery, giving her an Akatsuki cloak as clothing wear. She had 2 stub piercings running vertically in the middle of her nose. 2, cone-shaped, ones pointing out of her cheeks. A long thin piercing ran through both sides of her ears like the ones the Shodai had through his ears, just 1 instead of 3. And hanging from her bottom lip was a row of sharp-looking piercings that resembled teeth. Many more piercings lined the woman's entire body, and Madara wondered if that was the same for the other 2 Hokages, but there was just too many to count. Kurigakure no Sato, Naruto answered slowly, helping Tsunade with her Akatsuki cloak as she tried to get it on. Madara smiled as Naruto clapped his hands together, the 3X cages poofing into smoke as if they were Kage Bunshin. How nostalgic. The village of Omegakure no Sato was one of, if not, the smallest and poorest villages the shinobi world had come to see. Its citizens were mostly thugs working for hire, while those that still clung to humanity barely had any money to pay for a single meal a day. Many lived on the streets, and very few were rich enough to last a week on good living before becoming poor themselves. It didn't help that they had a tyrannical overlord that wanted nothing but money and power. It was a dying land, and within a year or 2, it'd be nothing more than a hollow wasteland of tall buildings. Even a powerful being like Sanshuo no Hanzo the salamander, who so happened to be the same totalitarian we were just talking about, could not save his people. Multiple civil wars were breaking out, and if anyone stepped into Aim no Kuni rain country, they would be thrown into a war zone of endless combat. Even the neighboring nations had to build blockades so that no one went in or out of the country. Kaboomm. Fuck. Amatora Shinryo, an ordinary soldier in the rebellion, screamed over the loud crashing of jutsus combating against one another. The middle of Omegakure was a complete war zone. The rail fell like hail, making the ground all the ninja were fighting on like water as it became muddy. The rebellion decided to congregate all its forces and try one last-ditch effort in attacking Hanzo's palace. They so far were halfway in the city of Omegakure, couple more miles and they'd reach Hanzo. Unfortunately, nearly half of their military was either injured or dead and their remaining forces were wearing thin. Shinryo turned to one of his allies, whipping the rain and mud from his face. Hanzo's forces aren't budging, what the fuck do we do? Another soldier next to him kicked an aim nin on the gut before slicing his neck. Pray to God, he screamed back, scarcely dodging an incoming attack from an enemy ninja. You rang? Asked a small voice, sounding quite feminine. The 2 could barely hear what this new person said, but turned to see who it was nonetheless. All they saw was a flash of white, the heavy rain clearly like it was never there, and all ninjas serving under Hanzo froze to the bone. Any ninja that were once fighting turned to see this new competitor. At first glance many thought it was a girl, but then they realized it was a boy, to some of the Shinobi's disappointment. The boy looked to be no older than a 15-year-old. He was wearing a high-collared cloak with numerous red clouds on it and normal blue ninja sandals. Another misleading thing dealing with his sexuality was the purple-colored, manicured, nails on his hands and feet. He was a brunette and let two long bangs fall down either side of his face while the rest was tied in a bun at the back of his head. Some found it weird he had a Konoha headband protector with a slash through it. It wasn't strange that he was a missing nin. Most of the ninja in rebellion were nuke nin, but they were aim nuke nin. It was the leaf symbol that they didn't get. Why would a Konoha nuke nin be caught up in this war? Though the strangest thing about the boy's appearance was the abundant amount of piercings on his face. There was one stub piercing at the top of his nose while 3 other stubs stuck vertically out of either side of his cheeks. 2 other ones were on the left and right sides of his neck. "What is your name, son?" a man the kid perceived as the commander asked. The ninja then realized it started to snow. "I have several names, Chikushudo, Animal Realm, Haku, but you can call my Typhon," Typhon answered. It was then that the commander noticed the boy's eyes. "Those eyes are they the Rinnegan?" "Yes, they are." Typhon heard multiple gasps throughout the group ninja. "Please," the commander fell to his knees with a splash as he hit the muddy water, bowing to 15-year-old, "We have few men to spar and our numbers dwindling. I beg you, descendant of the Raikudo Sennin, kill Hanzo and end our suffering. Please, Typhon-sama." Looking around, Haku noticed all the other ninja were now bowing. "Do not worry, that was my first intention to begin with." Chikushudo clamped his hands together as a large explosion of smoke under him took over the vicinity. When clear, Typhon was now standing on a large bird with a contorted beak that looked like it could smash through nearly anything. 2 large pike-like piercings were embedded in its neck and the Rinnegan was clearly present in its eyes. With a flap of its wings, the bird was airborne, heading straight for Hanzo's palace as the ninja below cheered on. "Hanzo is not to be underestimated," a voice behind Typhon told him. "He was capable of defeating the 3 Sannin when they were in their prime. I've only been training you for 3 months now, are you sure you won't need my help? Why do you think I'm not using my original body? I may have decreased the time interval it took to recharge my powers by 2 seconds, but it still isn't strong enough, all around, to kill Hanzo." Naruto told his sensei, Uchiha Madara, "Haku was low Chunin level when he died and because of your training he's nearly as strong as a Junin." Madara was about to cut in but Naruto continued, "I also have numerous advantages, like having Shirato, Asura Realm, hide and watch the fight so I can see it from all angles. And if things get too hectic I'll just have Zabuza enter the fight. He is near Sannin level now thanks to your training. I thank you for the appraisal, but that still might not be enough." Madara said, actually worried for the boy's safety, "When this is over you will finally have grabbed the title of leader of Akatsuki, but you're still a son to me. Your brother and I will be watching as well, so if you're in trouble, just ask." Typhon felt a strong hand on his shoulder. "Relax, I can easily use the 3 Hokages if need be." Madara didn't say anything as he gave Typhoon's back a sad look. Putting his orange spiral mask back on, the strongest Uchiha ever teleported off the bird. Typhon sighed, thinking of his surrogate father. A couple days into his training under the Sharingan wielder, Madara had adopted him as a son. Naruto didn't get what Madara got out of all this. He was an all-powerful everlasting human who just watched life roll by. Naruto learned of his dad's boring life during their training. It turned out Madara had gotten tired of his casual life of roaming the world, learning life's mysteries with his son Zetsu, Naruto's brother. Zetsu wasn't really his son, but Madara did plant him, literally. Zetsu was a 70-year-old carnivorous plant that looked like a human and was as ageless as Madara, just nowhere near as powerful. Anyway, Madara had gotten bored of his life, so he decided to start an organization called Akatsuki, which was made wholly of S-class nuke nin. Though during the years one of them quit because his plan of stealing the eyes of another Uchiha within the organization went unfruitful. Madara just found another member, letting the ex-member, known as Orochimaru, live for the time being. He then had them pair up in twos and told them they would all finally join up when he found a person to lead them. It had been 10 years since he started his search, and it's been nearly 4 months since he found that one person, Naruto. Though the members didn't know Madara found a leader, Naruto wasn't to become it until he killed a Kage and took over the village. A Megakure happened to be the village chosen. When Naruto asked why Madara was doing all this, he simply stated he was bored with life and wanted to see what a man with the power of 8S class and 1 SSS class, that was Madara, Nuke Nin under his control would do. Naruto had no objections to that. Bringing his daydreaming to a halt, Typhon noticed his bird summoning was slowly circling Hanzo's fortress. Go, Naruto ordered his bird silently, concentrating chakra to his feet as the aerial animal folded its wings in, plummeting to the earth at a high velocity. A great explosion rocked aim as Naruto's summoning crashed through Hanzo's citadel. The territory around Hanzo's palace was plain carnage. Houses and large towers the size of skyscrapers were destroyed, large pieces of the ground and trees were uprooted and thrown about, and the mass downpour had once again started up. The members of the rebellion had made it all the way to the outskirts of Hanzo's stronghold before total war broke out again. It seemed Hanzo believed the forces he sent to the middle of the village were going to be enough in cleaning the rebels up. Sadly, he didn't plan for a descendant of the Raikudo Sennin to show up. The battle had lasted a good hour and there were very few rebels that were left uninjured. The two armies had once fought side by side, even the higher-ranked ninja tried to kill the least they could. The fierce fight within Hanzo's palace could even be heard outside. Though none even went near it, knowing they'd most likely die if they did. The fighting had slowly stopped when the noises within the palace ceased, all hoping the unofficially announced leader of the rebellion came out the victor. Even Hanzo's men wanted the kid to win. The salamander was an awful leader, and barely paid his ninja the money they needed for their family's survival. The only reason his personal ninja didn't rebel was because no one was strong enough to kill the man, and even if everyone rebelled and found a way to kill him, no one was even good enough to be a Kage. Every ninja within aim was a missing nin. Why do you think they all had slashes through their forehead protectors? They didn't know how to run a village. Hearing the loud creaking made by the large doors at the main entrance of Hanzo's fortress, all eyes turned there, and all fighting stopped as the rain out of nowhere ceased. Some families that had their homes destroyed in the fight were trying to push their way through the wreckage so they could see who had won. Standing at the entrance was none other than Typhon, descendant to the Raikudo Sennin. His upper body was bare, the cloak he was wearing probably obliterated in the two's fight, and multiple holes ranging from small to big littered his black ninja pants. Many ninja that had seen him before wondered just how many piercings the boy had, as an uncountable amount of them covered his dirty and bruised body. Some women even blushed when they noticed how defined the young man was under all the piercings and bloody cuts he had. His hair bun was gone so his black locks fell unruly over his sweaty back, and blood leaked out of the left side of his lips. None could make out the gleaming metal item the boy had thrown until it landed in the dirt in front of the commander the boy had confronted before. All that were close could see that it was Hanzo's breath amplifier helmet headband thing. Walking until he was in front of the blood-spattered boy, the commander slowly kneeled like he did before. Following suit, every ninja and citizen slowly kneeled down, bowing to Typhon. Looking up from his bowed position in front of Typhon, the commander asked, "What are your orders, Amekage-sama?" End flashback. Leader Sama, Leader Sama. Shaking his head, the Nadaima Mekage knocked himself out of his daydream. Typhon was now standing in front of the negotiation room, much to his surprise, with all the members of Akatsuki, minus Itachi and Tobi, his father in disguise. "Gomen, sorry, I was lost in thought." Naruto apologized, giving a covered smile to Konan as she held her hand on his shoulder. Keeping her emotionless look, she nodded. "It's fine, just know that that is not wise. Someone of your stature could be assassinated if you're not wary of your surroundings." The face-hidden Kage chuckled. "Someone of my stature doesn't need to worry about assassins, especially with subordinates like them." Naruto motioned to the rest of Akatsuki behind him. I'm more likely to be killed by one of them, than by some assassin. Yeah, we're all plotting against you, Deidara droned sarcastically. Konan gave the blonde Akatsuki member a glare before turning back to her leader's self-satisfied smile, from what she could see under the mask, told Ya. Can we just go in already? Konan asked irritated, though she didn't show it. Ladies first, Naruto commented, waving his hand to the door gentleman-like. Staring at Naruto blackly for several seconds, Konan reached for the door handle and opened it. Danzo and his two advisors, Utatane Kaharu and Mitokado Homura, sat within a fairly colorful room in the Amekage's office building. The room was littered with couches and chairs whose purpose was obviously to sit in and negotiate from the way they were positioned. Several more Konoha nin, who weren't retired, sat behind the three elders. The most noticeable one was Hyuga Hiyashi with his nephew and two daughters, Hyuga Neji, Hyuga Hinata, and Hyuga Hanabi. He wanted them to gain experience in the field of politics, so he asked if they wanted to come along. The old Hiyashi would have forced him, but he had changed greatly after the nine-tailed Jinchuriki's death. Now, the three were able to choose whether they wanted to go, which they did. The Hyuga clan in entirety was completely different because of the boy's death. It's kind of funny, alive most of them hated him, but in death he can finally change them. Hiyashi and Hikaku, head clan member of the Hyuga branch family who was persuaded by Neji to fight for their freedom, had given it their all in changing the elders' opinions. Danzo and the Konoha council did not interfere in the Hyuga's affair, letting them sort it out. Though it took a year of political arguing and on more than one occasion a small physical fight between branch and main family members, the Hyuga elders finally caved into the two's endurance. The seal on every branch member was now gone forever, and any knowledge of it destroyed to never be used again. Now they were working on congregating all the branch family members with the main family. Though it was going smoothly so far, some of the members still held hate towards one another. As for personal affairs dealing with the boy's death, many perspectives and determination had changed for certain Hyugas. Hiyashi told Hanabi that she was no longer the successor. He had changed it to Hinata's younger sister right before the Chunin exams 3 years ago when he deemed Hinata unworthy of that title, because now the older sister was stronger, average Junin level nonetheless. Though with some arguing and a quick beatdown by her older sister, after Hanabi had challenged her, the younger Hyuga's opinion completely changed. Hinata became quite a strong kunoichi after Naruto's death, making it to the finals of the Junin exams a year ago. Sadly for her, her older cousin, Neji, was also taking place in the exams. The two clashed in the finals, much to the honor of the Hyuga clan. What, it's not often you have two of your clan's members as the finalists. Though in the end, Neji pulled out the victor, but that didn't mean Hinata wasn't becoming a Junin either. She had been a Junin for a year, deciding not to take a genin team because she couldn't handle it if one of them died. If any one of them were to die, she'd remember all about Naruto, mostly because the genin would be the same age as him when he died. Even to this day, if she thought about the blonde, she'd end up in tears. Neji could now even be compared to that of his uncle Hiyashi, being one of the strongest within the Hyuga. He, along with Hinata, had made Junin a year prior and also decided against a genin team. He found they'd be annoying distractions that would irritate him to no end. Every day, along with Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba, who had all become great friends a couple days after Naruto's death, they would visit his grave, even when just returning home from week-long missions. Visiting his grave was always the first thing in their to-do lists. Hanabi was now a Chunin, along with her two partners, Moegi and Konohamaru. Udon, who was formerly Moegi and Konohamaru's third partner, was no longer a ninja. His mother, Izuki Yugo, had been so heartbroken after his father's, Gekko Hayate's, death that she couldn't bear to see her son die as well. So retiring with all the money she got from being an Anbu captain, she and her son left the ninja life and were now regular villagers. Hanabi, who had been getting personal training by her father, was finally chosen to be put on a team, and lo and behold, it was none other than Konohamaru's team. All occupants already within the room turned their attention to the opening door leading to the hall outside. Entering was a woman with blue hair, a small piercing under her bottom lip, and an origami-made flower-like hairclip was poised on the right side of her hair. She was wearing a high-collared black cloak with many red clouds on it, plain blue ninja sandals, a headband protector that had a laceration through the four pars that symbolized aim, and painted and manicured nails. Following were an array of people with the same getup as her, even the same purple painted nails. The only distinction between her and the other was the array of different headband symbols that were slashed. Out of the 8, the one hiding all his features, from the bandana covering all his hair down to the mask that hid his entire lower face like that of a certain silver-haired Junin back home, and the Konoha headband that all noticed had a gash through it, was the one that stepped forward, stubbing his toe on the edge of an empty couch. Ow! Son of a, Typhon stopped, remembering where he was. He just knew the Konoha people were giving him weird looks from the way their tenketsus were formed, and it didn't help that the rest of his Akatsuki were snickering. He even thought he heard Conan giggle. When Naruto wore his blindfold, which was hardly ever, he found he'd occasionally bump into something. This something was always an inanimate object. Yes, while blindfolded, Naruto could see people's blue chakra and tenketsu, and at quite a distance and through walls, though not as powerful as a full-blown Byakugan, but that was it. Couches, poles, buildings, and other non-living things didn't have chakra or tenketsus. He basically saw right through the inorganic stuff and didn't acknowledge their existence until he was hitting his head or stubbing something on them. That's the only reason he never wore his blindfold. He was only wearing it now because he didn't want a large epidemic as to why he had the Rinnegan startup with the 3 elders, especially with one being a Hokage. Naruto made sure Konoha had no idea of his Rinnegan when he left, faking his death as to close any attempts at tracking him down and killing him with Hunter Ninja, like they would have actually accomplished that. The one in the middle of the couch at the other side of the room, Naruto presumed to be Danzo, was the first to talk. Is it really wise for the leader of a village to be so full of openings? From what Danzo and his 2 advisors could see, the Jinchuriki smirked under his mask, who said this wasn't on purpose. The most fatal opening one, or even many, can have is underestimating his opponent. Naruto copied one of his father's favorite sayings. The Rokudaime Hokage would have continued the argument, but they were there to make peace, and this village, along with its allies, was the only hope they had of surviving the foreboding war just on the horizon. As much as I'd like to continue our little squabble, we are here strictly on business. And that you should be. Typhon told the matter a fact-like as he planted himself on the sofa a mere yard and a half away from where the 3 elders sat, raising his right arm so he could rest it on the back of the couch. The 7 that entered with him still stood motionlessly behind the settee. Having 4 villages, especially with one of them being a hidden village, declare war on you, is quite hectic. As you can see from our position, we are in dire need of your help. Naruto was surprised at how eager Danzo was at getting his approval of a treaty. It seems even his pride is willing to accept that Konoha will lose without help, no matter how strong it was. Letting out a sigh, the 16-year-old Kage hung his head, much to the confusion of the Konoha nin. I hate war. Some of the younger ninja there were taken aback by the Kage's proclamation. Danzo just sat there, knowing the young leader was not done. War breeds hate, which brings suffering, suffering brings more hate, which breeds more war. It's a never-ending cycle of madness. We, the leaders of our villages, tell everyone it's going to be alright, that we'll prosper through this curse called war. Yet we ourselves feel its never-ending itch of insanity, tugging at the back of our heads as we make promises and lie to the very people we swore to protect. The Amekage's long rant was turned to mumbles only a sentence in, no one but himself hearing it as he continued to talk to himself. Noticing the weird looks he was getting from the way their tenketsus were formed, the Nadaime cleared his throat. Sorry about that, I've seen the worst thing a war can create through its carnage. It is something you'd never forget if faced with it. Now, if you'll continue. Naruto dismissed the questioning looks he was still getting from a couple of young Hyugas he noticed the moment he entered. The 3 Hyuga heirs were surprised at how mature the man acted. He was said to be the youngest Kage, though the older generations would beg to differ, saying he wasn't part of a hidden village, so being a Kage didn't count. It was rumored he was but a mere 13 when he reached that position. A year later, Suna, who had been Kage-less for a whole year, nominated the 14-year-old known as Gaara to be their Kage. He was considered to be the youngest Kage by the older generations, though their opinions seemed to change when his first decree as Kage was to break Suna's alliance with Konoha and join Omegakure for unknown reasons. But as for the opinions of the Hyuga, they wondered what had made the teen so accustomed to war. He acted like he'd been around it all his life. That raised many questions that needed to be answered. Danzo, though a little freaked at the boy's bizarre behavior, the Hokage felt some relief. If the teen wanted him to go more in depth with their plans, then that was a good sign. So far Cha no Kuni Tea Country, Kawa no Kuni River Country, and Tori no Kuni Bird Country have all declared they wish to stay neutral in this war. But Iwa is not one to take no's lightly. It was reported they tried taking Tori no Kuni over by force like they did Takigakure no Sato Hidden Waterfall Village, but your village interfered. I wonder what would have happened had Cha and Kawa no Kuni not been protected by neighboring nations. Danzo could see another smile under the boy's mask. Why do you think I didn't send any ninja there? I knew none of the villages would dare try and cross Hai no Kuni Fire Country just to attack Cha no Kuni. And none would foolishly try to get past Suna, Aim, or Konoha just to take over Kawa no Kuni. Danzo didn't like the fact that his village was being used, but he continued, the three have announced multiple times they were remaining neutral, but it's obvious they are sending you supplies from the shadows because of your supposed protection. Why wouldn't we protect them? They don't have any ninja villages to protect themselves from war. I see no harm in just helping them out because they're not taking sides. They're not really neutral if they're supplying you with goods. Danzo was starting to get annoyed. They were about to start fighting about who was right again like before. The leader of Ne knew that would crush their chances of alliance, so he changed the subject. What about Nami no Kuni Wave Country, and Umi no Kuni Sea Country? Umi no Kuni is staying out of the war. There's no point in worrying. They're the farthest continent from any of your enemy villages and are under the control of Kurigakure no Sato Hidden Mist Village. Nami no Kuni is also under the Mizukage's control as well and don't even have any ninja to spare, so there is no worry. Naruto was now fully sprawled out on his couch, hands behind his head as he laid it on the couch arm. The young Jinchuriki detected that every time he would say not to worry about something, a part of Danzo's body would twitch. Through gritted teeth, Danzo grumbled subconsciously, why you, this brat. Danzo would never call him a Kage, just like the older generations, because he was from a non-hidden village, had the same damn idealisms as that bloody Sarutobi and Yondaime, trusting others so easily. It just made the Sixth's blood boil hearing such crock. Even now, when he was about to make an alliance with this village, he still did not trust them and was ready to retaliate if betrayed. Naruto didn't know if he was supposed to hear that. He had heightened senses because not even Homura or Koharu looked like they heard what Danzo had said. Something wrong. At that moment everyone seemed to notice Danzo's livid demeanor. Sadly, by the time they got to see if it was real, he had changed back to his stoic nature, no matter how mad he still was. Answering, Danzo tried his best to keep his voice level. He wasn't the Hokage for nothing. You act like none of these villages you claim to be neutral would ever even think about betraying you for something more another village could offer. This is the real world. People betray other people, villages betray other villages. It does not end. Just because one day they're your allies doesn't mean they won't be your enemies the next. Only a child would believe in such foolishness. Naruto, at the end of Danzo's speech, sat back up with a jolt, having several motives to do so. 1. He had to use his own killer intent to cut the flow that was rolling off his Akatsuki members. No one called their leader a child. No one, so none of the Konoha nin would sense it and get the initiative to fight. 2nd, he didn't need a battle-talking place in his own office building. Though it'd be short and the Konoha nin would be dead within minutes, it still wouldn't have been good business. And 3rd, he knew he had to show Danzo just why he was being so relaxed when it came to war. Standing up, all occupants shifted their sights to the youngest cage in all the land. I guess it's about time to show you around the village, but before that, know that I am a very trusting cage, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The leader of Akatsuki turned to the blue-haired woman that had entered first, shoving off the weird looks he was getting. Konan-chan, take the Konoha nin and their superiors downstairs, I need to have a small talk with our friends here. The rest of Akatsuki could feel the intense glare their leader had sent their way. All the others within the room seemed completely oblivious to the killer intent that stung Akatsuki's side of the room. Of course, Amekage-sama. Not wanting to be scolded too, Konan followed orders and guided the Konoha members downstairs. Once the room was left with 7 Akatsuki members, Typhon turned to his subordinates, a deep scowl clearly seen under his mask. What the was that? A wave of murderous killer intent hit the 6 nuke nin at the same time like a tornado. None other than Kisame and Kakuzu were able to make eye contact with their leader, while several others even had to take a hesitating step back. Hidan, follower of Jashin, missing nin of Yugakure no Sato, hidden hot springs village, and wielded a large 3-bladed scythe, was the first to gain the courage to talk back. Funny, he was one of the craziest blood-craved members of Akatsuki, yet he was one of the few that took a step back. I don't see what the fuck's the problem. All we did was try and fucking stick up for your, so what the th. Next thing Hidan knew, he was a foot and a half off the ground, the wall pressed to his back, and his Amekage's forearm forced against his neck, choking him. Now, the Jashin worshipper wasn't going to die from something simple like this, but it was still very uncomfortable to be in. Though what really got the beads of sweat to start going on Hidan's forehead was the fact that Typhon had taken his blindfold off in the time it took for him to pin Hidan against the wall. Hidan had once fought the Rinnegan user at Akatsuki's first meeting. He claimed that there was no way he was going to follow the orders of some 13-year-old. Even Akasuna no Sasori of the Red Sand, shared his opinion. But after destroying Sasori's Akahigi, Hyaki no Suin Red Secret Technique, performance of 1,000 puppets in 5 seconds and cutting Hidan's entire upper torso in half, the two were convinced. Just remembering that day sent shivers through his body, making the hair on the back of his neck stand up. Flashback. Akatsuki was in a large cave called Crystal Cave, one of the many hideouts they had. It was located in the southern area of Kisanengakure no Sato Hidden Tree Revival Village beside Jurin no Kyomo Forest of Delusions. It was vast in space, and very sturdy. When Madara first found the village, it was originally called Kibatugakure no Sato Hidden Tree Felling Village, but after defeating the demon that was located in the cave's deepest area, they renamed it, fully dedicated to Madara like he was their cage. That is why no ninja has as of yet wandered into the cave when passing Kasanen. The villagers kept their mouths shut about it and had it boarded up. The only entrance was a high-up opening that Madara created within the room he defeated the demon. The only way to get to that opening was scaling up the mountain for several miles. Though from the inside, it gave you quite a view over the large mass of forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. When Madara first introduced Typhon to the members of Akatsuki as their leader, all had different opinions of the situation. Why wouldn't they? Imagine you're an S-ranked missing nin in an organization with other S-class nuke nin. You know all of them because they're all near the front of their village's bingo book. That shows just how dangerous they are. But then, the man who created the group, Akatsuki, comes in and shows you who your leader will be. He has the same uniform as you, same accessories except the bamboo hat because nobody wore those at meetings, as you, has blonde hair, okay. That's fine. Multiple piercings covered his face, alright, that's kind of cool looking. 3 identical whisker-like markings on either cheek, pretty weird, but wait, he looked like he couldn't be any older than a 14-year-old. And, remembering the few pages in front of the Konoha bingo book, it was the headband he was wearing. You find that he's nowhere to be found. Hell, even if he was at the back of the book, it went strong in the front, weak in the back, he would have at least been mentioned. No one under the age of 16 has yet to leave their village, so a 13-year-old leaving is big news. So, do you know what that means? It means he's not even in the bingo book. That is where a couple of them had a problem. Zetsu, knowing the two by heart, knew that Typhon was going to be the leader, so he stayed motionless to the side. Konan, the only female member within Akatsuki, was wondering why Madara would pick someone so young to be their leader. He did look kind of scary with the piercings and with those weird ringed eyes, but he really wasn't emitting something that said, "With me and you're dead." He seemed calm and ready for anything if something were to happen. It took Konan a minute to realize she'd been looking at him blackly, causing her to slightly flush. It only reddened when his eyes connected with hers. Luckily the blue-haired woman was able to hide it under his high-collared cloak. What the hell was the kid doing, checking her out? She was 41 years old, nearly 3 times his age. To Conan's relief, and some disappointment, their unblinking eye contact only lasted several seconds before Typhon looked away to another member of Akatsuki. Uchiha Itachi, killer of his entire clan except for his younger brother, stared stoically at the boy 5 inches shorter than him. The Uchiha didn't really care who their leader was because if Madara-sensei said he was capable, then he was capable of being the leader. Hoshigaki Kisame, former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist, wasn't that surprised by the kid's age. He'd seen a fair share amount of young men who were exponentially strong, Itachi and Deidara being a couple of them. Akasuna no Sasori was emotionless like always, so none of them could tell what he was feeling. Deidara just dismissed the entire group, going back to his brooding with him. The 91-year-old, Kakuzu, was also one that did not care who his leader was. As long as the kid didn't interfere with his bounty hunting, so to say, they'd be best of friends and he wouldn't have to steal the kid's heart. As for Hidan, well, you've gotta be kiddin' me. Hidan screamed at the top of his lungs, pointing his finger at the stoic-looking blonde while the back of his red side laid gently on his other shoulder. We've waited 10 years just for you to tell that our leader is going to be some kid that's not even 14 yet. Yes, what's so hard about that? Madara asked, tilting his head, not getting the equation of 13-year-old equals the leader of Akatsuki. What, do you have to fight or something? Madara didn't have to look to know that Naruto was unwavering in that last question. He had informed his son that some of them would most likely not agree with his decision and challenge the boy. Naruto still had 2 more years of training under Madara before it was complete, but he knew he could take any of them, be it 1 or even 2. That wasn't overconfidence speaking, it was the truth. A large blood-craving smile cracked along Hidan's face as he licked his lips, the red side of his pointed at the 5 feet 3 inches Jinchuriki. I thought you'd never ask. Hidan. A deep scowl now crossed the white-haired man's visage, hearing the metallic voice of Akasuna no Sasori. Not taking his eyes away from the supposed leader of Akatsuki, Hidan waited for Sasori's slouched form as he dragged himself forward, inch by inch. Count me in. Fine, just don't get in my way, ya wouldn't. It was a clear fact throughout Akatsuki that Sasori's true body was a puppet. An insane smile came back to the Jashin worshipper as he pivoted and dashed at Naruto, only dust from where he stood remaining. Naruto would have to hand it to Hidan, he was pretty fast. But speed was the Rinnegan user's forte, no one other than his 2 fathers were faster. Naruto flipped back without using his hands as Hidan swung wildly with his scythe, giving his leader's taijutsu skills a test run. Within seconds Hidan was just aiming to take off one of the youngling's limbs, which were easily sidestepped or ducked. Through the dodging, Typhon had effortlessly recognized a couple problems with the evil priest's taijutsu style. His taijutsu was called Urabeto backbite, one of the weaker combinations between Tora tiger and Suru monkey. It mostly revolved around using large weapons that could cut down your opponent with one flick of the wrist because all its moves were mostly wielded and almost unpredictable. You had to be very agile and flexible or you'd accidentally cut off your own limb in the process. Naruto knew the style all too well as he continued to dodge Hidan's useless attempts at cutting him. Madara had recommended Shirato Zabuza learn it for its unpredictableness against the well-trained eye. The Sharingan user had jammed it into the boy's head that some of the strongest ninja in the world could predict 100 moves into a battle just with a glacé at their opponent, and that's without any kind of dujutsu. That's why you had to be unpredictable, another one of the blonde's specialties. His father had also said many a time that the greatest downfall to any who can predict so far into a battle was that of an impulsive genin, who just wasn't predictable. Getting knocked out of thought by the three-pronged scythe that was thrown his way, Naruto looked to see Hidan holding onto the metal elastic rope that connected to his thrown weapon's handle. Naruto's ribs seemed to bend like rubber as they moved right, the scythe lightly cutting through the cloth of his cloak, spilling no blood and puncturing no skin. Damn, now he was in for another long lecture about not getting distracted by Madara later. Naruto pushed his beating later away, knowing Hidan was getting closer and closer to maiming him. The Jinchuriki had been well informed by his brother of all the techniques the members of Akatsuki used. Hidan just wanted some of the youth's blood so he could use it for his ritual, ultimately ending in the blonde's demise. Now he knew why the man used Urabeto. When in the right hands it could be very gory and dangerous, especially if one didn't know how to counter it. Lucky for Naruto, his father was very cautious and always made sure you had a backup plan. He wasn't one to teach you something and then not tell you how it can be countered or defeated, unlike his previous senseis. What was the point in learning something if you didn't know its weakness? Though, as the most unpredictable person, probably, in the world, Naruto would always work hard at the style and try to increase it into something that had no weaknesses like the Urabeto's few wide openings that were as visible as day. That was its one true weakness, having wide open openings. They might have been few, but they were huge blind spots to the user. Naruto would have just used the counter, but Typhon was a caring god to his subjects, and as such he'd show the man the perfected form of Urabeto he created, Rararishu backlash. But, that was only if the gore-crazy priest was able to kill the boy's current body. Naruto looked out of the corner of his eye behind him as Hidan pulled at his metal rope, the scythe following as it came back for Naruto. Uttering, Kawarimi change of body stance, Naruto was cut in half, but turned into a sliced rock after a poof of smoke. Some yards away Sasori, still hidden within his puppet Hirako, slowly wormed forward until he was at Hidan's side, the rest of Akatsuki several more yards behind the two. Naruto stared stoically at the ritual killer and puppet master while Hidan looked irritated and Sasori had the same expression as any other puppet, none. Oi, Tem. Hidan snarled, swinging his scythe back onto his shoulder. How is it ya was able to make a kawarimi without any hand seals to channel your damn chakra? The boy had the smallest of smirk on him, almost resembling that of Sasori's whenever he showed his real face and was very happy about something. My Rinnegan eyes give me perfect control over my chakra, something no other can do. Therefore, I do not need to have a center for my chakra when doing simple E-rank jutsus. Anything higher will need two hands, though I can still use some one-handed jutsus. Most were taken aback by the realization that the boy had the famed Rinnegan. Having never seen them before, they all thought he just had weird genetics. Sasori slugged an inch further, announcing his presence. Do not be ignorant, boy. One could spend a millennium on chakra control but it will all end in vain. No one can have perfect chakra control, it is not human. Would you believe me if I told you I was a god? Naruto could hear the scoff from Hidan and several other Akatsuki members back in the group. I guess fighting you two will be the only way to show you my powers. Hidan's insane smile came back. You guessed, within a swirl of smoke by a shunshin, Hidan was in front of Naruto, scythe raised and aimed to decapitate the boy, right. The scythe smashed into Naruto with a crash, a cloud of dust getting kicked up everywhere as the ground underneath the two cracked apart in the shape of spider webs, from what all the other occupants could see from outside the dome of grimy smoke. Within seconds the cloud started to fade. The Akatsuki members watching saw the back of Hidan as he seemed to be struggling against something. If one was to look from another angle, they'd see Hidan's three-pronged scythe was stopped by the hand of a 13-year-old that held onto the outermost blade with ease, a look of boredom on his face. All the weight and strength of Hidan's attack had traveled through the boy and into the ground, which explained the cracking of the ground and all the pressure. What? Sending a burst of chakra throughout your limbs to strengthen them 100-fold was nothing to one who had perfect control over his energy output. Annoyed with the boy's strength, Hidan came at the boy with a left knee. Naruto used the knee as a stool, jumping onto it with one foot and flipping over the Jashin worshipper. Naruto grabbed the unfastened rope that flung loosely behind Hidan's hand, off the scythe's handle, as the kid landed back to back with the older man. Bring his other hand to the rope, the Jinchuriki pulled on it with a mighty heave. Crushhh. All was silent. The lowest blade on Hidan's scythe had pierced straight through his stomach like a hot knife through butter. Hidan's back was still turned to all that were viewing, so they couldn't see the heavy blood that leaked from his mouth, but they did see the blood that seeped through the deep gash in his abdomen. It seemed the rope connected to his side was the only thing keeping Hidan up, because when Naruto let go of it, the man fell forward with a splash in a pool of his own blood. The scythe added to the gore fest as it deepened its wound in Hidan's stomach when it hit the ground. Sasori looked ever so blank at the boy's accomplishment. The puppeteer was the first to make a move as he ripped the black cloth hanging on his mouth off with his right hand. A barrage of endless senbon shot out of Hiriko's three-part divided jaw. All watched marveled as the senbon hit an invisible wall that seemed to grow. You could tell from how the trench it was creating got bigger. As it got closer to Sasori, all the needles ricocheting into the ground or piling onto one another. The senbon attacking wasn't ending. The force, knocking all the needles down, was charging Sasori with speed as he continued his unfruitful senbon attack. Sasori, knowing his senbon were doing nothing, jumped far to the side, avoiding the blast with a lot of agility for someone within a puppet. The force, now multiple times bigger than it was before, smashed into the cave wall behind Sasori, a large portion of it caving in on itself, sending a large cloud of dirt everywhere. Sasori reached the back of his cloak with his right hand, which Naruto would later realize was the only human-like characteristic of the puppet other than its two legs, slinging his Akatsuki cloak off as the smoke cleared. Naruto noticed Sasori's puppet, Hiriko, had several noticeable features as it stood on all fours. Its left forearm and down was a large rod-covered gauntlet with bar-like fingers. On its back, below his shoulder blades, was a large red kabuki mask that scaled the whole length down. A large, poison-covered scorpion-like tail protruded from the kabuki mask's open mouth, resembling something close to a tongue. Typhon didn't know if that was a part of Sasori's whacked sense of humor or if it was to initiate intimidation on his opponents, because if it wasn't working on him. Hiriko's gruff voice echoed through the cavern, slight irritation present. What the hell was that just now? A small smirk like the one he had before played onto Typhon's face. Naruto vanished from sight with great speed before reappearing in front of Hiriko in the blink of an eye. 1 foot hovering over the ground and an open hand but an inch away from Hiriko's face, the Jinchuriki slowly landed gracefully back on the ground. Shinra Tensei Divine Judgment. Sasori didn't need to know what was about to happen as he swung his tail down on the boy, trying to get any damage in before he was blown back. Sadly, the tail wasn't even close. Hiriko was sent flying over the rock ground, crashing into the same collapsed wall Shinra Tensei had hit earlier. Sasori's puppet only made it worse as the force pushed him a yard into the gravel of fallen wall, completely covering him in its mound. A small burst of dirt exploded from the mound of collapsed cave as Sasori pushed himself out. The lower right section of Hiriko's mouth blown off, the area it previously was connected to chipped and rigid. Dirt from the crumbled wall he was formerly covered by was coating his entire wooden body. Typhon couldn't really tell from Hiriko's deformed face what he was thinking, but it looked like the puppet was mad. I'll kill you for that. Naruto ducked his head, a large red scythe soaring past it as it tried to decapitate him. Hidan looked wide-eyed as his scythe missed the boy's head, continuing to twirl in the air as the weight of his scythe swung him around. What the was that? He's not a bloody Hyuga. With swiftness Naruto planted his palm on Hidan's back, right over the large gape in his stomach that his scythe created, and uttered his favorite jutsu, Shinra Tensai. Hidan was sent flying face first at Sasori as he was blasted in the back, his arms spread out as they were unable to move. Taking a step right, Sasori dodged Hidan's blur as he collided with the mound of crushed rocks. Sasori waited a minute before Hidan came swinging out of the dirt pile with his scythe, slightly coughing and choking on the dust he'd inhaled. "I hate this little prick." Hidan coughed into his left sleeve, resting the tip of his scythe on the floor so his right arm could have some rest from its weight. "We're going to have a pretty frisky relationship if you keep up with the snide remarks," Naruto warned, his smirk gone and a frown to replace it. Hidan and Sasori weren't that surprised by Naruto's heightened sense of hearing. They learned not to be surprised by anything this brat pulled out of his. Dashing left, Hidan ran to Naruto's far right, stopping several yards away from him, off. Naruto faced Sasori but looked out of the corner of his eye to Hidan's charging form. Naruto proceeded to do multiple one-handed seals with his right hand as it stayed by his side. Noticing the boy's attention was drawn to Hidan, Sasori aimed his gauntlet hand to the sky over Naruto. The gauntlet shoot off his arm, and once over the blonde, detached all its bars as they split in half airborne and a shower of senbon were sent falling for Naruto. Though once Sasori noticed Naruto's stationary left hand started to make seals in a blur, somehow noticing, even though he wasn't looking, the senbon that were about to make him into a porcupine, the puppet master knew he'd found an opening. Thinking swiftly, Sasori hunched his lower back up, his elongated tail racing over the ground to stab the Rinnegan user. Finishing his 2 sets of hand seals, Naruto raised his right hand and made a horizontal slash motion at Hidan. A large highly condensed wind came slicing out of his hand. Fuden. Kazakiri no Jutsu wind release. Wind cutter technique, turning his face up and bringing his hand over his mouth as if he was going to use it as an amplifier for his voice. Naruto spouted, "Sweeten. Mizoripa water release." Violent water wave, a jet of steam came bursting from Typhon's mouth, blasting all the falling senbon away. Scary thing about the whole ordeal, Naruto did both jutsus at the exact same time. As for Hidan, he used his scythe as a defense mechanism to block most of Wind Jutsu's power. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to stop himself from blasting back like a bullet by the technique's force, crashing into another section of wall within the cave that, too, broke and fell atop the Jashin worshipper. Though the destruction was much smaller in size because you could see 2 of his limbs sticking out of the dirt mound in a crooked position, and his scythe lay with all 3 of its blades impaled into the earth a foot next to him. Hearing Sasori's tail-like weapon whoosh through the light drizzle that surrounded Naruto after his water jutsu was done, the Jinchuriki turned to see the edged weapon was an inch away from his heart. Kicking back off his heels, Naruto gained a couple seconds before the weapon pierced his heart. Sadly for Sasori, Naruto only needed 1 second to think up a plan. The tail weapon penetrated through the blonde's heart diagonally, making a crunching noise as it sliced into him. Sasori pulled the dead blonde over to him, keeping his tail through the boy's heart. "Oh, did I forget to mention," everyone turned to see Madara trying to get Sasori's attention. Typhon's strongest ability is thinking on the fly. Sasori didn't know what the Sharingan user was talking about, but he wasn't going to make any mistakes. He looked to the place he'd stabbed the boy through the heart, noticing nothing was strange about the area. Just dry old rock ground. Wait a minute. Didn't the brat just use a water-based Ju? Snapping his head back to the boy he still had hanging from his tail, Sasori watched with expressionless horror as the started to distort, almost looking like rubber as his body extended in weird ways. Sasori didn't realize what the thing was until after it turned a transparent blue and fell onto the ground with a splash, wetting the ground. Mizu Bunshin water clone. By the time Sasori looked down, after sensing the small spark of chakra under him, it was already over. Naruto's palm pushed up under Sasori's half-broken chin, creating ripples through the earth like it was water as he extended from it. Enough hiding in this puppet, Sasori. Grabbing Hiriko's lower wooden jaw, Typhon pulled the puppet's head off its body. Naruto shoved his hand into its hollow body, feeling around for a second, before pulling out a cloaked figure that he threw opposite of the puppet. What was that just now, yeah? Deidara asked out loud, now interested as to who this boy was. Kisame seemed to be the only one to know, a giant grin plastered along his shark teeth. Doden, Dochu Senku Underground Submarine Voyage. Several seemed to nod in understanding, other than Deidara. What the hell is that? It's not a very powerful technique, so I'm not surprised you don't know it. Though when in the use of someone with high chakra reserves, it can be very effective. Using bursts of chakra, you mend it with the earth around you so you're able to swim through it like water. The only difference, you don't get anything on you. It's actually one of my favorite jutsus. Sounds interesting, The mess of black cloak Naruto threw back landed on the ground flatly, two hands and a red-haired head lying on the ground. Sasori slowly picked himself up, putting most of his weight on one knee before fully standing up. It has been said that Hirako was Sasori's second favorite puppet, the first being the Sandame Cage, but from the impassive look he was giving off, some would probably have to argue with that. Though I pride myself on not underestimating my opponent, believing you could be powerful enough to lead 9S class Nuke Nin was just something I could not do. Sasori spoke truthfully. Sadly, I will not make another mistake like that. Sasori grabbed the side of his cloak, flinging it off his body as his puppet body made itself known. Two metal blades that could possibly be used for flying clung to either side of his lower back. 4 scrolls placed vertically in a black cartridge on his back fitted perfectly. A large, sharp, flexible cable, most likely covered in poison like his other weapons, coiled up in his stomach. The most noticeable feature of all would have to be the large purple scroll that had a red insignia, red, Scorpion, HMPH, fitting. A skinny blue chakra string extended from his left pointer finger, attaching to the bottom scroll in his scroll holder. Sasori flicked his wrist, the scroll easily sliding out and into his left hand. Turning it to Naruto, Sasori slowly unraveled it with one hand. A kanji seal saying, 100, and other seal markings littered the center of the scroll. A puppet user's ability is measured by the number of puppets they can use. Sasori pulled the right side of his collar with his remaining hand, showing the square lump that pushed out of his right. Pulling the cover open, a blue chakra flared from within, showing he was nothing but a chakra-filled puppet much like his other Hitokugutsu. Within this scroll carries 100 puppets of which I used to conquer a nation. Throwing the scroll up into the air, a massive amount of red blurs rained out of it. An uncountable number of chakra strings extruded from his open chest plate, connecting with the 100 red-clothed puppets scattered the air. Each puppet had an array of visible weapons that looked deadly. It was only worse that they were all poisoned. Some would question Sasori's tactic of bringing his trump card out so early, but others would realize it was the smartest one could make when fighting Typhon. Obviously the kid was a taijutsu master. You had to be when your teacher had the highest level of Sharingan, had perfect chakra control, even though Sasori still didn't believe it, and had a power that could destroy or block anything. Having numbers was the best option. Even if the kid could continually fire that weird move called Shinra Tensai, it would eventually wear him out. Just one of those took a lot out of the child. He hides it well, but Sasori could tell. Even Sasori in his pride would admit that he could have died had the 13-year-old decided to use another taxing Shinra Tensai when he was under the ground. The might of Shinra Tensai could have easily broke Hirako apart and killed the person, or puppet to be precise, inside. Yet, the child did not. It was that which first told Sasori that Shinra Tensai was a strenuous technique. Sasori held his puppet's attack, waiting to see what the piercing-covered 13-year-old would do. He was welcome to the smallest of smirks as it curved the boy's lips. So ka. Datara, really? If that is so, Sasori watched as Naruto pulsed with chakra, so potent and strong that it illuminated his entire body in shining blue ferocity. Then let me personally be the one to teach you that quality is better than quantity. Naruto spread his legs apart, lowering his upper body so it was an inch away from the ground in front of him, arms cocked to his side. 5 seconds, Sasori tilted his head, showing he didn't understand the young Jinchuriki. 5 seconds is all I'll need in order to defeat your puppet army. Who is underestimating whom now? Sasori asked, noticing out of the corner of his eye that Madara raised his arm. Ready. Seemed Madara was going to be the timekeeper. At full speed I can take down 3 to 4 puppets a second, therefore that idea is out because it would take too long. Naruto contemplated, waiting for his father start the time already. I could use a large-ranged Shinra Tensei but no, wait, that would completely exhaust even my chakra reserves. Besides, I still have Hidan to deal with, wherever the hell he went to plan. Set. Naruto then noticed something, that's it. Now, how to get there without being maimed and paralyzed by one of his puppet's weapons. Go. Madara whipped his arm down dramatically, Naruto already gone from his spot. Naruto planted his foot on the bald head of a wooden puppet at the center of Sasori's army. Taking this chance, Sasori sent a surge through his chakra strings, commanding all the puppets to surround and attack the boy. 5. Naruto pushed off his bald footstool, grabbing 2 of the unluckiest puppets that were near him as he twisted wildly, using them as battering rams so no other puppets got in the way of his true target. The smashing and clunking of wood meeting wood filled the air as Naruto forged an aerial path to Sasori. 4. Once several yards away from Sasori and a couple dozen puppets destroyed, Naruto dodged the diagonal attack that came from one of the puppets' warped-looking whip-like arm. Naruto wrapped his arm around the wooden appendage the puppet had as a whip and made sure it was facing Sasori. With one burst of chakra to the feet, Naruto kicked off the braid-haired puppet's chest, caving it in as he made a straight beeline down at Sasori. 3. Sasori's arms clanked as they aimed for Naruto's free-falling form, 2 small silver tubes at the center of either palm extended an inch and a half out. Unbeknownst to the rest of Akatsuki, one of the 3 remaining, there was 4 at the beginning of the fight, scrolls attached to his black backpack, scroll holder dissolved into chakra. Molten hot fire erupted from the tubes like flamethrowers as they scorched and suffocated the air that was around them. Naruto put his hands together, in a diving fashion as the flames merely pasted over his body like there was an oval dome of invisible energy covering his body. How he loved Shinra Tensei. Breaking out of his invisible dome and blasting the flames away, Naruto finally took a step on ground as he extended his arm towards a couple feet away Sasori. Naruto found it weird that Sasori's lip somehow curved up into a smirk, mostly because he was a puppet, but why would he do that after his fire attack failed utterly? 2. Naruto's Rinnegan eyes widened in horror as the space between Sasori and himself contorted. Within a second of the shunshin, Hidan appeared in front of the unbalanced boy, scythe already pulled back as it reeled forward, hoping to take the blonde's head off. All Naruto could do was bend his head as far left as he could, but it didn't stop the outermost blade from cutting a deep gash into his right whiskered cheek. The blood lapped up nearly his entire cheek. Hidan was about to flip his scythe over and go for another attack, but was beaten to it as the kid placed a cold right hand over the immortal's heart. Looking down, Hidan was met with the hate-filled eyes of one who's suffered their entire life, Bansho Tenon, all creation attraction. Hidan's eyes were wide and bloodshot as they rolled into the back of his head, going into his death-like coma that happened every time he died. The large silver cable that was once wrapped around itself in Sasori's stomach had shot out of him, easily piercing Hidan through the back, right where his heart is. Even Sasori had his mouth agape at how his cable was forcefully pulled from his stomach. 1. Naruto wasted no time in grabbing Hidan's shoulder, using it to flip over the temporarily dead carcass so he was but a foot away from Sasori's unprotected body. Gripping all the chakra strings that extended from Sasori's open chest plate in his hand, Naruto smirked triumphantly. It was impossible to rip the strings out with physical strength, so he did the next best thing, he overloaded the strings with his own chakra. Doing this would cause a small fission of energy that could completely destroy the 3, but Naruto was known for taking chances. You wouldn't. Before Sasori could finish his sentence, the blue strings were cut. A large explosion, a good 1,000 times smaller than the splitting of an atom, blew the 3 from each other with a large cloud of dirt. All the puppets fell to the ground with nothing to hold them up, and Sasori listened in horror as his creations plummeted down to earth. None of their initial body parts would be destroyed, but that's not what Naruto was aiming for. From that height, a puppet's greatest weakness would immobilize them, the joints. The dolls clattered and clanked as they smashed into the ground, arms and legs and heads dislocating from their bodies, not to be used for the rest of the fight. Zero, Naruto let out calmly as the smoke cleared, revealing the demise of Sasori's puppets. I can only use one more Shinra Tensei or Bansho Tenin before my chakra supplies are nearly depleted. I've got to make it last. He made it. Madara told the members lined next to him, confirming he defeated all those puppets within the time set. Konan and Deidara stared wide-eyed at the boy's strength. Sugoi, awesome, the exploding clay user nodded his head dumbly at Konan's mumbling praise. Zetsu, Kakuzu, and Itachi continued to start stoically while Kisami's smile widened. Kid's pretty good, Kakuzu stated out loud, getting a couple groans in agreement from Zetsu and Itachi. Kisami's smile grew bigger. Naruto wondered if Sasori was mad, if the clenched fists were anything to go by, but as for his face, he was as expressionless as ever. What the hell did you do to me? The two combatants' attention was drawn to Hidan's struggling appearance. The Uzumaki at first thought he could get up because all the blood spilled around him kept making the man slip. But then Naruto noticed the dark purple that seemed to float in the blood, remembering the tool used in killing Hidan. It seems my caution of Sasori's stomach cable being coated in poison turned out truthful. Sasori's advantage was your disadvantage, Hidan. You little she. Hidan clutched his stomach, once again falling face first into his own blood as he felt the poison singe his organs. Damn, Sasori had his blasted poisons. You may not be able to die from the poison, but it will surely keep you immobile. Naruto was a bit disappointed. Hidan failed his test, therefore, Typhon would not show the man Ararashu. I'll kill ya for this, ya little prick. Hidan screamed through pain and blood his face was splashing in, promising the boy pain. Naruto paid no heed to the fallen Akatsuki member as he turned to Sasori, who was no longer there. Thanks to his heightened senses, Naruto heard the two jets, of what sounded like water bursting his way behind him. Naruto twisted so his side was facing Sasori, the two highly condensed jets of water sent screeching past his front and back upper torso. By the time Sasori crossed his arms, in hopes of severing everything from the bottom of his chest up, Naruto crouched, the power jets doing nothing more than cutting a few strands of stray blonde hair of his head. Sasori's hands did several 360s, the silver tubes, once used as flamethrowers, shrinking at their openings, making the high-pressure water compress and sharpen itself even more. Naruto rolled backwards, the jets cleanly cutting through the rock earth he was once squatted over. Now knowing where Sasori was located, the blonde nuke nin pounced up, proceeding to use his much greater speed as he appeared in front of Sasori's head and over the arms that kept pumping out water. Sasori's mouth dropped with a click, another small tube extending from the back of the human puppet's throat. It came to Naruto as a surprise when the silver tube didn't shot water, but a purple poison that engulfed the Jinchuriki. Naruto inwardly cursed, using his last Shinra Tensei. The mist of poison blew away and Sasori was sent crashing back, bouncing off the ground like a rock skipping over water as large dents in the earth followed his path. Naruto let out a loud, well-needed, sigh as he hunched over, hands on his knees. Slowly looking up to Sasori's downed position, Naruto's eyes stretched as wide as they could before rolling into the back of his head. Blood seemed to seep from the middle of an uninjured forehead as Naruto fell forward, face first into the rock ground as an echoing thud rang through the cave. The boy was dead. A maniacal laugh boomed throughout the cavern, all watching Akatsuki members turning to the source. Hidan stood without a cloak, just baggy black ninja pants and sandals, on a large red Jashin symbol used from the blood that oozed from the masochistic worshippers, many cuts layering his body. The large gash in his stomach and the hole through his heart had clogged up with blood. In fact, none had yet to find one part of skin that was not covered by his own red liquid, but if they did, they would have seen his skin back and the skeleton outline that etched his torn-up body. They then realized why Naruto was now dead. One of Hidan's ritual spikes that he usually kept in his cloak's sleeve was embedded in the middle of his forehead, eyes looking up in pleasure as he relished his ritual's satisfying feeling. Ha ha ha, I told ya I was gonna kill ya, ahahaha. Hidan screamed, blood spiting out of his mouth as he continued to laugh. Well, maybe the kid's not that good. Kakuzu broke the ice, contradicting his earlier statement. You've got to hand it to Hidan. Cutting himself and dying multiple times so the blood filled with poison left his body was actually impressive. It surprises me how he did so, with such a minuscule IQ. Hidan stopped his laughing as he looked to his partner, a deep scowl across his face. Oi, Teme, I heard that. This doesn't make sense, Naruto's brother, Zetsu, thought to himself. I informed Naruto-kun of all their powers, he shouldn't have been killed. White-side Zetsu felt the right side of his body tug at his conscience. Fool, Naruto just underestimated the man. That doesn't make sense, father crammed it into brother's head that underestimating someone led to death. And even without that, Naruto was never one to underestimate his opponents. True, but look at his limp body, it's clearly dead. He wouldn't be there if he wasn't underestimating Hidan. Oh, take a gander over there, father's seething. Zetsu, along with Itachi, who always took into account his surroundings, saw that Madara was livid. His mask was covering his face, so they couldn't see if he was making a face or not, but they could see that he was gripping his biceps tightly while he held his arms crossed. That little brat, overestimating his abilities like that. First he wastefully uses his Shinra Tensei to show off, then he goes and dismisses Hidan's abilities just because he was immobilized for the time being. Hidan is not the brightest out of the bunch, but he is an S-ranked missing nin. Be prepared, youngling, the next 2 years of your body's trainings are going to be hell. Hidan, who had stopped his unfruitful attempt at getting Kakuzu to fight him with his shouting, turned to Madara. Ya see now. That little shit ain't nothing to fucking talk about, especially if he's gonna be our leader. Hidan got more frustrated when Madara didn't reply. Oi, you liuk. Hidan's upper body jerked forward, blood leaking out of his mouth and onto the already blood-coated body of his. He started to look down at what just happened to him, but it was futile as his upper torso fell back, everything under his chest and down falling forward as he split in two. Even his 2 arms were cut from his shoulders. All but the 2 Uchiha watched on, shocked, as Hidan fell to pieces. A large man, wearing an Akatsuki cloak, crouched down with a huge, blood-coated, zanpakuto in one hand at his side. Kisame seemed the most shocked. Well, I'll be damned. Momochi Zabuza and his sword Saikafu renewal. Hearing his former name called, Shirado stood up, leaning Saikafu on his shoulder as he took Kisame by surprise yet again. It was strange for Kisame to see Zabuza without the bandage around his mouth because, well, he never saw him without them. Another strange aspect was the devil of the hidden mist was smiling, something Kisame thought was impossible for Zabuza. But what told Kisame this was no longer his old partner, was the Rinnegan in his eyes, the slashed Konoha headband that was kept the same way he used to wear his Kiri-1, and the multiple piercings that lined his face. 2 small stub piercings ran vertically down his cheeks, while a looped one went from the tip of his nose to the top. A circle of cone-shaped piercings ringed his head, but they were barely noticeable thanks to his unruly black hair. Finally, there was another stub piercing on his chin, but this one was at least 3 times bigger than the other ones. Asura Realm turned to Kisame, answering him in the same deep and gruff voice he always had. Sorry, Kisame, but Zabuza is long dead. Unsurprisingly to Kisame, Zabuza had the same shark teeth as him, a trait passed down to all 7 swordsmen of the mist. What the hell is that kid? The Iowa prodigy asked, realizing this new contender was actually the boy that just got killed. But that can't be right, he's still lying dead over there. All will be answered when the fight is over. Madara told them, reassuring that they'd have their questions answered. Some of the members didn't get what he meant. The battle looked over, but surely enough they were answered when Sasori came charging Shirado's back with his metal wing-like blades spinning. As Sasori was about to cut Zabuza in half with his right wing blade, Asura realms seemed to grow two extra faces on the back of his head. One was frowning, and the other looked as blank as Itachi. But that didn't help him as the spinning blade sheared through his clothes and cut him to pieces. Sadly, those pieces turned to wood under the cut-up cloak. Sasori didn't realize the devil of the hidden mist had used a kawarimi until he was pulled back by the cable he had yet to recoil into his stomach after it pierced through Hidan's heart. Typhon spun around with Sasori's cable in hand, his Zanpakuto stabbed a foot in the ground next to him as the puppet master smashed and broke through the multiple boulders that plagued the cave floor. Letting go of the cable, Sasori was sent spiraling towards a large boulder. Regaining his balance in midair, Sasori flipped and crouched onto the side of the boulder he would have crashed into. Sasori sent chakra to his feet, giving him an extra push as darted for Zabuza, the cable now fully drawn back into his hollow stomach. Sasori, now having a god look at Zabuza's body as he flew forward, saw that he had 3 arms on either side of his body. One pair was in front of his shoulders, another was in the middle like a regular set of arms, and the last were behind his shoulders. And on closer inspection, each appendage had 3 black bar piercings running through their forearms. Another surprising quality was the jagged, thin, and very flexible tail that extended from an opening in his back. It seemed to be dripping with an unknown liquid. Zabuza bent over, his jagged tail racing at Sasori. Thinking fast, Sasori shot his stomach cable into the ground, pushing him up over Zabuza's tail as it cut through the mesh rope that connected to the sharp end of his cable. Die! Sasori screamed uncharacteristically as his right-wing blade looked to cut through Zabuza's body once again. Typhon caught Sasori's wing blade between his palms as it continued to spin, cutting through the paint that Sasori thought was skin. He would later punish himself for not realizing sooner that Zabuza was mostly puppet. Sasori noticed Zabuza's middle set of arms formed hand seals under the front ones as the back arms did their own series of hand seals behind his back. Sasori cursed under his breath as he brought his hands up, the 2 opening into 4 panels at the forearm, acting like a shield. Kako Junpu light shield seal mechanism. Blue chakra in the shape of a shield covered Sasori's 2 arms, protecting him from the 2 jet streams of fire that blasted from Zabuza's smiling face. Kaiten, Karyu Enden fire release, fire dragon flame projectile. Sasori was sent back crashing through boulders in a blaze. Zabuza's puppet body bent backwards, the back set of arms along with the frowning face taking control as he dived into the ground backwards like it was water, using his Doden, Dochu Senku. Wiping his arms so the flames would vanish from his shield, Sasori looked around for his opponent while trying to brush the charred pieces of wood on his body off. "Where'd you go?" Sasori fell limp, his heart scroll several inches pushed out of its socket as a hand held onto it. Behind Sasori, Zabuza had one of his left arms through the hole the scroll once laid in. He knew all along that the scroll needed a vessel, but without one, it was nothing but a pulsing purple scroll. "That's enough, Naruto," Madara yelled over to his son. Typhon pulled his hand back out, letting go of the scroll as it fit back into its socket perfectly. Sasori took a deep intake of air as he fell forward on his hands panting, trying to get a hold of himself after having his heart taken out and put back in. "Oh, come on, I was having fun." A cold voice rang. Everyone but Zetsu and Madara were surprised to see a blonde Naruto sitting with his legs crossed on a high boulder, away from the battle. "What the, I killed you." Hidan, who was currently getting his left arm stitched back to his shoulder by Kakuzu's tendrils, screamed over at the boy. The evil priest's face was nowhere near as bloody as it was before. Hidan had ripped the left sleeve of Kakuzu's cloak off so he could use it to clean his face, but before he could Kakuzu punched him in the head, caving in his skull as he died once again. Though once back alive and his head inflated, earning the masochistic another joke from Kakuzu about him not having a brain, Hidan wiped his face with the sleeve, watching as Kakuzu started his surgical procedure of reattaching his limbs and body. "You did," Naruto told the Jashin believer as he jumped from the top of his boulder, walking with Zabuza, who picked up Saikafu, over to Madara. "But, like you, I can revive." As you can see, I have chosen wisely when it comes to the leader of Akatsuki. Madara spoke proudly, even though in the back of his head he wanted to start the rest of Naruto's training already. Do any others object to my decision? None spoke up. Good, now, as I promised. Do any of you have questions? Madara scanned over Akatsuki, waiting for someone to speak up. I've been wondering, Madara-sama, Uchiha Itachi started, gaining everyone's attention. What are the powers of the Rinnegan? Turning to Naruto, Madara gave him the go-ahead. Naruto turned to the area the three's battle had just taken place, all turning to where he was looking. 4 silhouettes formed at the other side of the cave. Soon 4 people with Akatsuki cloaks came into view, and most of Akatsuki were shocked to see who several of the bodies were. Naruto proceeded to go into detail of the Rinnegan's powers, telling them about each body, their special abilities, and the fact that they all had shared vision. Through the discussion, all their questions were answered. The biggest question that needed answering was how he was able to dodge attacks when they were behind him. Some gave a quiet, ooh, when he told them he had all 5 of his other bodies summoned before he engaged in battle with Sasori and Hidan, letting him see when they were about to attack him from behind. Even the question about him reviving by the Shodai Hokage's spectral Enma head was asked. Naruto got a kick out of their reactions when he told them they could only see it because he wanted them to. Once the conversation was over, Madara cut back in. Now that everything is clear and out, me and Naruto will be leaving. He still has 2 more years of training to do. Even Itachi looked surprised at that. You don't think he's strong enough already? Deidara asked, not believing the kid had more training coming his way. For the past year I've only trained Shirato and Chikushudo, with some Tendo thrown in there. Tendo will still need more training, and as for Gakido, Jigokudo, and Ninjendo, they be the hardest. You see, when Naruto takes over a dead body, all the information about their lives and jutsus go back to him. He knows what the jutsu is and how it works, but even then it doesn't mean he can do it. Surprisingly, Naruto was able to figure out some of the Shodai's Mokuton without my help. But even then, they are but hollow shells of their former selves. I knew both Hashirama and Tobirama like we were brothers, so I'm the only one that can teach him how to use their jutsus to the fullest. As for the Godime, she will be the easiest out of the 3 because all she knew was medical ninjutsu, with several regular jutsus. And medical ninjutsu is just made up of chakra control, which, as Naruto has stated, is perfect. Madara took a small intake of air as he continued to talk. Hopefully by the last year we will be finished with training those 3, and all my attention will go to training Diva Realm Naruto, along with teamwork between the puppets. So then what the are we to do? Hidan screamed, standing up. Naruto was the one to speak up. You will go to Omegakure. I have informed them that you will all be there within a couple of days. They have prepared a welcoming party for you all and will show you where you'll all be staying. We will still meet somewhere else on occasion, but from this day on AIM will be our main hideout. Naruto noticed Itachi's eyes widened slightly in shock, and now it seems Uchiha-san has realized just who I am. The Nadaima Mekage, Itachi stated, getting some surprised reactions from the others. Isn't he the one that killed Sanshuo no Hanzo? Sasori, who had walked over several minutes prior, whispered to Zetsu. He got a nod in return. Go to Omegakure, they will heal any of your injuries and give you further instruction as to what you are to do. Every Akatsuki member besides Madara nodded their heads, not objecting to their leader's wishes. I shall see you all in 2 years. Madara, Naruto, and his 5 other bodies left with a shunshin. Things are going according to plan. Naruto told his father as they jumped from tree to tree, nearly a quarter of a mile away from Crystal Cave. A warm smile hid behind Madara, Orange Mask, all the anger and disappointment at the way his son acted back there now gone. Akatsuki, in time, shall be the greatest power the world has ever known. Flashback end. Typhon's eyelids slowly opened, revealing the famed Rinnegan eyes as he held the blindfold in his hand. Hidan, looking in them, thought that even Jashin's resurrecting power would not save him from this man. I don't give a damn as to what that old geezer calls me. As long as my plan succeeds in the end, he gets to taunt me all he wants. And if any of you, even think about jeopardizing this plan, I won't hesitate to kill you. There's one thing you all need to know as Akatsuki members, you're expendable. Letting Hidan go, Naruto turned around, heading for the door and past the rest of Akatsuki. Hidan rubbed his neck sorely. Well, what about that bitch Konan? She fucking leaked killer intent just like the rest of us. You will refrain from name-calling the people you work with, especially with that profound language of yours. Naruto stopped at the open door, and as for Konan, you can rest assured that she'll get hers when we're alone. Now, come on, we have a false treaty to make and people to entertain.